Look at consistency today, because I feel like it's something that gets missed. And I think it's something that if you can get right with the things we're going to get into, you can leverage it, and it can be kind of your superpower. So the reason I thought I'd cover this is I feel like I have pretty average ability over pretty much everything I've done in my life. So if you look at things I've been relatively successful in terms of social media, fitness, business potentially, right? These are things I feel like I've got pretty much average ability at, when I was kind of genetically predisposed to be average. I think because I've been consistent at these things, fitness is probably the number one thing. Been doing it sort of 12 years now, training kind of hard. I think that's allowed me to move maybe past others who potentially were not as consistent or have just fallen off because they've lost things. So I've delved into it a little bit for you today and reverse engineered my approach to things a little bit to try and make it actionable for you. So this isn't just going to be me gobbing off, because I appreciate I have a Birmingham accent, so it's probably not ideal. So there's going to be a little bit of kind of audience participation, and you're going to hopefully leave this with a sort of 6-week action plan for you to take forward. All right, so it won't just be me on send. You'll be happy to know. Cool. So I thought I'd leave this quote in there. It's pretty self-explanatory. You know, you can map this over into pretty much anything you want to, right? So if you're not consistent, you're never going to make it. If you are consistent, you might make it. So no guarantees with anything, right? You know, we can go into CPC for those of you going to the Marines, and we can think about, okay, injuries, whatever. But if you're not consistent, there is no way you're ever going to make anything happen, okay? If you are consistent, at least you give yourself that chance. So I feel like consistency is one of those things that is overlooked, and people sort of take it for granted, and people think they're maybe just genetically not consistent. But I'm going to hopefully show you today why that's not the case, and anyone can be if you just have the right structures around it, okay? So first thing we look at is the law of incremental gains, and this is kind of how a habit mapped over time, if you are consistent enough, can be quite powerful. So I'm going to use this as a little bit of a demonstration. You can see the graph there, okay? So it's how one seemingly innocuous action mapped over time can yield disproportionate returns. So what I mean by that is, you can obviously see the graph there. If you get 1% better every day, over the course of a year, you're going to be in a really good place. That's obvious to everyone, but if we bring it into sort of a actionable example, you think about a back squat. If we were to squat every week and add 5 pounds to the bar, that adding of 5 pounds is not anything, is it? It's not a massive jump. That probably feels like fuck all to everyone, really. If we do that over 12 weeks, 16 weeks, 20 weeks, you're going to be in a really good place after that. Probably not that simple with fitness, because you have to periodize things and all that sort of stuff, but on the whole, we can take a small habit, and if it's moving us in the right direction, even just a little bit, then if we do that enough, consistently enough over time, we're going to be in a good place. I think this is a bit of a silly example, but work with me. If you look at brushing your teeth every day, again, it's one of those things that we all do, and we're all consistent with that, hopefully, twice a day. Otherwise, some stinky breaths going on. But if we look at that as, again, nothing happens when you brush your teeth. And if you don't brush your teeth, again, nothing happens, right? If you don't brush your teeth for 30 years, you're probably going to experience some pain, some dramas. If you do brush your teeth for 30 years, then you're probably going to be okay. So it's one of those things, and again, when we get into habit setting in a minute, and we actually try and write down these habits, think a little bit about how small these habits can be. So it doesn't have to be a completely world-shifting example, all right? It can be something that seems like it's a little habit, and that's probably where you should start, because that's something we can actually do, and we can action today and tomorrow, all right? So when we get into that in a little bit, just keep that in mind. Cool. Look at allocation of resource. So this is how we allocate time, energy, money, all right, whatever it is. So this is going to be looking at the goal we want to set for today. So this is my sort of messy funnel on the left-hand side there. We see if that's making sense to anyone, but I will deconstruct it for you. So we can take this into any goal we're going to set. So the interest is going to be at the top, the goal is going to be at the bottom. In the middle is that messy part, okay, the process, the habits, whatever. Again, if we look at the goal as being a marathon, the interest will be running, okay, and the middle bit, the middle 16 weeks, 20 weeks is going to be the process, okay, and that's the bit that people don't really know how to box around, how to navigate. Same is true for joining the military, okay, interest is the Marines, the goal is to pass out and get your green lid, the process is that bit in the middle. So that bit in the middle is hopefully what we're gonna try and achieve. But first we need the goal, then reverse engineer and get the process from it. All right. So when you're setting a goal, again for today, if we look at a couple of things, they need to fall into this category. So pretty simple. All right. I don't like to get too overcomplicated. So something you give a fuck about and something that's going to serve a future you. So again, if you think about a marathon, okay, you might care about raising money for someone, you might care about challenging yourself physically, cool, that fits that. And then the next sort of point is it's going to serve your future. You're going to be fitter, you're going to have the accomplishment of running a marathon, right? So you can, again, map that into anything. But when we get into goals, in just a second, try and keep these things in mind so that we can set something that is actually going to serve you in the future. Cool. Okay, so when we've got the goal, hopefully we're going to look at habits around that. So if we can split your page into two columns, we're going to have a column for life, okay, and a column for fitness. So I want something that's lifestyle related and not fitness related, and something that is fitness related. So again, it can be anything. I don't really care what it is at this stage, all right, but just get something down in both of those columns. And our first exercise is going to just be to write down 3 habits that are conducive to that goal. So again, looking at setting the goal as an initial piece, and then we're going to think about, okay, well, what are 3 habits that are going to move me closer each and every day to that goal? All right, so life, fitness, away you go, 3 minutes. And if you've got any questions about how to set these and what to do, then let us know. But I'm just going to set you free for sort of 3 minutes to think about this. Don't rush it, but just get something down. And we'll continue from there. But again, if anyone's stuck with that, just let us know. 3 minutes is just a guide. You might have longer if you need it. So 3 habits in the life column, 3 habits in the fitness column, and then we're going to look at something else as to how to actually embed that into your routine. Cool. I'll shift on. Happy days. Cool. So if you haven't quite got 3, 2 is fine, whatever. Just as long as there's something you can take away over the next couple of weeks and look at an action. Because again, it's no good just having the information. We actually need to implement it at some stage. Cool. We'll look at habit loops. Anyone heard of habit loops before? No? Jay's smiling. Okay, so this is the habit loop. This is sort of responsible for all human behavior if we actually deconstruct it, even things we don't even think about, like brushing teeth, as I mentioned before. So cue, craving, response, reward. And we can see a little demonstration of this, hopefully, on the right-hand side. So the cue will be you wake up and you feel a bit lethargic, feel a bit tired. The craving is to feel a little bit more energized. Okay, the response to that is to get a new tonic or a coffee or whatever. And then the reward is that you feel a little bit elevated. All right, so that's a basic demonstration, an example of the cue, craving, response, reward cycle. So if we look at a habit, hopefully we can create this cycle to embed it into our routine a little bit. All right, so is everyone happy with that, how that kind of works? Yeah? Cool. Doesn't have to be, a feeling of a reward or whatever. I'm going to get into how to actually look at that in a second. But hopefully, just if we can figure out and think about something we do on a daily basis, maybe it's training, maybe it's whatever, and we can actually think, okay, what's the cue, what's the craving, what's the response, and what is the reward? Hopefully that's making sense so far. All good. Cool. Okay. Next thing, we're going to structure these habits into this habit loop. Okay, so the habits you've got down, the 2 or 3 on each column, structure these into some sort of plan. So what I want you to do, get a new page, write the habit at the top. Okay, you're going to write the cue and write whatever that cue is. You're going to write the craving, the response, and the reward. All right, the reward is kind of difficult. I'll explain why before you kind of get set off. So with anything that's kind of worthwhile, as we know, as I'm going to touch on later, it's kind of going to be short-term pain for long-term gain. Okay, we've all heard that. We all kind of know and understand how that works. So when you take your supplements every day, you don't really feel an immediate benefit. When you get 8 hours sleep, you don't feel that immediate benefit. And that's fine. That's why we have to create something in the short term that is that reward piece. Okay, because if we're not getting the reward from the habit until 8-10 weeks down the line, then it's just going to be a little bit hard to embed that into your routine. All right, so I think if we can, a good example of kind of a reward piece and this is super basic, super dumbed down, but it actually does kind of work, is if we can think about, again, if we take the example of taking your creatine every day, everyone forgets to do that, including me. I think I forgot today. So every time you take that creatine, if you have a calendar across wherever your creatine is placed in the kitchen, whatever, and you check the mark, check the X of that day, every time you take it, eventually you'll do 2 days in a row, you might do 3 days in a row and break, 2 days in a row break, whatever. Eventually you'll have 5, 6 days, and then the game just becomes to not break the chain. That's it, and that's as simple as it gets. And if you then have 6, 7, 8, gathers that momentum. And that's super simple, and it is a little bit of a reward, and every time you get to tick that, you get that dopamine response. And the same is true if me and Jay spoke before about putting your phone outside your room before you go to bed. Every time you do it, it's a pretty difficult thing to do. Every time you do it, you check the box, and you go again and again and again. And again, if you're in any way competitive, you'll probably start to embed that a little bit, because you think, well, I'm battling myself, I don't want to fuck this up, so I don't want to mess my streak up. So again, if we think about a cue, crave, and response reward for all of these habits, you've got 5 minutes, off you go. Just sort of write them out so that we can hopefully take something away from this. Let's see if I can work the clock. Cool. Next piece then, we're going to look at removing friction. So now we've got the habits, hopefully. We've got the goal, we've got the habits. We're going to figure out how to best curate your sort of environment to facilitate keeping these going. So it's no secret, okay, humans will take the path of least resistance. We like the easy route. It's pretty much hardwired. If we can make something easy, accessible, attractive, it's going to be something we probably do on a day-to-day basis a little bit more. So again, I'll use the example of taking your creatine every day. So taking those supplements. If it's, you come downstairs, it's in the back of the cupboard, you've got to find it, you've got to assemble it all. Probably going to be a little bit of friction there to not take those and maybe not stick to that habit. Certainly as you get, further down the line when the motivation starts to go. At the start, when you set this goal, you're like, yeah, well, I'm going to take my creatine every day, I'm going to be stackers, I'm going to be fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger. You probably take them in the first couple of days. After that, you probably think, well, they're a little bit far, there's a little bit too much to do, I'm in too much of a rush, whatever. And you start to rationalise it. So if there's something that you do on a day-to-day basis, most of you probably make a coffee or whatever it may be in the morning, or brush your teeth, for example. Put in the creatine or put in the whatever it is you want to do in front of that coffee machine. So you literally can't miss it, you have to pass it. Is something that is just so powerful to make you stick to that thing. Because if you actually have to move the creatine out of the way in order not to take it, it's probably gonna happen. And the sort of age-old example of this, which I'm sure a lot of you do, is if you're going for a run in the morning and you think it's early morning, it's dark, it's cold, whatever, I've got to go and do 10 miles, then if you're having to match up your socks, charge your Garmin, find your shoes, find your kit, whatever, in the morning, when you're sat in bed, it's going to be much easier to chin that run off. If you've got everything laid out, if you've got your Garmin charged, if you've got your shoes laid out, everything's good to go, it removes that friction and compresses the timeline and compresses the things you've got to do to get from the bed out the door. All right, so that's just something you can look at, again, with these habits that you've now hopefully got. We can start to think about how we can curate your environment to make sure those are easy to follow. Happy with that? Cool. Next. So the importance of a correct support network. So again, environment's everything. We've all heard, you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with the most. I think this extends to probably social media and hopefully, your coach and that sort of network as well. So I thought I'd flash this up. Everyone's seen this photo. Okay, a classic one from a meme or something. We've got the guy on the top, okay, ambiently consistent, hoofing attitude, okay, he's good to go. He's on HS Fitness VIP. And then we've got the guy on the bottom who's threaders, probably working with Civis Commando or someone else. He's literally so close. He's so close, right? And he's fucking wrapped. So what are the difference between these two individuals? And there's an interesting sort of thought exercise I wanted to go into, but it's probably reading into it a little bit too much. It's just a fucking meme in it. But you can see I've stripped away the picture, okay? You can see the attitude difference between the two. He's buzzing. He's loving it, right? He's loving the process. Happy to go and fucking axe away at whatever he's doing. The other guy's fuming. Okay, his shirt's hanging out. His tie looks shit, right? He's threaders. I think that's interesting. The fact they've created those two people like that is because you've got someone who clearly enjoys himself, clearly is happy with what he's doing, happy in the pursuit, and you've got the other guy who's like, fucking hell, when is this going to end? And then he's quit. So I think, again, this is kind of hardwired, but typically the things that we do that are going to benefit us in the long run are going to be things that are not showing any fruits of our labour until a month, 2 weeks down the line, whatever. So you might do a session and not get anything immediately from it. That's fine. And the same is true when he axes at this thing. He spends a full day digging out on his DigX. He's not getting anything. And the more he does that without the correct support network, the more he's probably telling himself, what am I doing? This is probably, this is not going to yield any fruits, whatever. And if the people around him are compounding that by going, yeah, mate, come down the pub tonight, whatever, don't do that session, you don't need to run that much, whatever it is, feeding that sort of negative loop of thinking, then he's going to be ever closer to quitting every time, all right? And the same is true, or the opposite is true, sorry, for the other guy. If he's got mates around him who are supporting him, if he's got a coach in his corner, if he's got whatever, then hopefully, even if he does something and he doesn't see the immediate results, he'll either trust in the process because he's bought into someone that he kind of trusts, or his friends and his environment will keep him right and will keep him on that trajectory. Everyone happy with that? Again, I'm reading a lot into a fucking meme here, aren't I? But I think it works out. Cool. Okay, last sort of thing. This should be pretty easy. Again, I've been speaking about when short-term sort of pain yields long-term benefit. This is for everything pretty much you want to look at. If you overconsume alcohol on a night, some of you have done last night, you're probably feeling a little bit shit today. That's an example of the opposite. Okay, you're stealing pleasure from tomorrow to feed today. So, easy. Okay, you've got your habit. In the short term, is it pleasurable? Okay, long term, it's probably painful. The inverse is true. Okay, habit, short term painful, long term pleasurable. So, easy example of this. Some of you are joining the Corps, but any military selection course we're going to look at. So, if CPC is down the line in 8 weeks, okay, easy choice 8 weeks down the line is to miss that session. Painful in the long term is to fail CPC. Okay, reverse it. Hard choice in the moment is to do that run, do that session. The pleasurable thing in the long term is to pass that course, run that marathon, do whatever it is you do. All right. So super easy to understand, I think, but something that does get lost. And I think needs hammering home a little bit, especially when we're looking at goals and habit setting. Cool. Finally, the big man. So discipline equals freedom is his sort of tagline, but I'll steal it. So the more disciplined you can be in the short term, the freer you're going to be, quote unquote, in the long term. And again, this can be anything, but I would probably map it over into a financial setting initially. That's probably the easiest to understand. If you can be smart with your money in the initial phases, invest it, do whatever, not fucking spunk it on a car, then in the long term, you're probably going to be financially well off, right? If you do the opposite, where you buy a depreciating asset, you looking at buying coffees every day, whatever, in the long term, you're probably not going to be in a fantastic place, okay? Everyone kind of get that? Happy? All good. Okay, that's it. Again, I want to keep it short and sharp because I think it's more important that you lot have something written down that you can take away versus sort of me just going on for an hour and a half, which I could do. That's it. Q&A time. Any questions? Anything? It can be about anything. It doesn't have to be about habits or consistency. But any questions?
Super personal one, Harry. What are your current goals and what are the daily habits you're using for them?
It's a good question. Put me on the spot. So I am training for fitness-wise. I'm training for AFEX. Is a sort of short term. We've got something in the background that's going on. That's going to be myself and Ed and potentially Blood. That's looking at cycling between the 3 peaks. So the 3 peaks challenge, but cycle the routes in between. So that's going to be a lot of cycling for me, and I haven't even started cycling yet, so that's going to be interesting. In terms of what habits I'm putting in place to... The physical side for me is kind of an easy one because it's something I've always done, as I mentioned at the start. It feels almost weird if I don't do the fitness now. So I've sort of inverted that loop in terms of I get so much pleasure from the sort of pursuit that I don't really need to motivate myself to do it. So that's fine. I know I can just hit my 5-6 sessions a week and I'm good. For the ATHEX things, that's cool. In terms of business, there was a couple of things I wanted to hit this year that I set at the start of the year, which was one of them was client events. So thank you for showing up, because that was one of them. So that was kind of one. I wanted to expand the team. Obviously, Blood and guys you've seen, which is cool. In terms of going forward, we've got another couple of events coming up. I know a couple of you went to the one in the Peak District with Carder. That's going to happen again in the latter part of the year. So that's cool. And then just looking at trying to, so I'm with a business mentorship at the moment. I'm just looking at how essentially I can refine the service as much as possible, because that's the game, right? You know, the better the service is, the better the business is going to be down the line. So again, daily habits. This is getting a little bit into business, but whatever. Can I look at sort of daily, weekly, and monthly checklists? So those are my sort of habits, right? Can I check in with 3 clients a day? Can I do whatever? Can I start 3 new conversations a day with new potential clients, whatever? So that's kind of where I look at is these checklists. Again, super basic things. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10. But probably the shorter they are and the easier they are to understand, the better. And I think, again, if I do that enough over time, I'm terrible at long-term planning, which is kind of why I kind of like this, because it just means, what do I have to do today that is going to eventually benefit me? I can understand that, whereas where I'm going to be in 5, 10 years, I don't really kind of know. So does that answer your question?
Does it?
Yeah, cool. Any others? Yeah.
Just a sort of continuation there. So these checklists that you've had, do you have something like dings you on an email or calendar at the end of the
When
year?
I've done it, or when to remind me?
Prompt you?
I don't, but I have post-it note on my sort of monitor at home. So for the daily one, I have them all written down on my monitor at home, and they're sort of, it's just 3 easy things. And if I'm staring at it all day, it's very difficult not to do it, which is sort of something I've found helps me. And again, it's all just iteration. It's all just test and adjust. Does this work? Okay, no, okay, what can I change? Did I be consistent with this for 3 weeks and then stop? Why did I stop? And it's about continually auditing these things. Something else I find quite useful and quite interesting is like a monthly review, and I do it on a business setting, and I do it yearly on a sort of personal setting. But the more you can review the trajectory your sort of life is going, and maybe your fitness, or maybe whatever, the more you can keep yourself right. Because it's so easy for us to go into like autopilot and think about, well, you know, it's stressful at home, stressful at work, whatever, and you just end up getting tunnel vision and not looking around in terms of, am I going in the right direction? If you can have a monthly stop and almost have like a meeting with yourself. Okay, check in and be super candid with it. How's my relationship going? Am I happy with the friends I've got currently? Am I spending enough time with people who I care? All these kinds of things that we all really know we should do, but probably don't do as much of. And that's what I'll try and do, is just implement like a monthly meeting with myself and just think, okay, have I done this? If not, why? Happy with that? Cool. Anything else? No? Sick? Cool. Happy days. Hopefully you got something from that. Hopefully you've got something written down. I hope you remember it, Erica. But if you have any questions about anything that you want to ask sort of separately, then that's fine. Bloods, you're next, right?
Yeah.
Sick. What do you want to do?